Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Pleasure as Medicine with Dr. Fraya Wolf and Tara Galeano. My name is Meredith Vesh. I'm a clarity coach and host of this Full Living After 50 series. And today's topic is one of my favorites. It's all about pleasure and how you can still feel juicy after menopause and why you want to. So my intentions in today's conversation and all the conversations of the Full Living After 50 series is really about helping you make peace with your 50-ish body so you can continue to boldly create the life you love. So with that, I'm so excited to introduce you to two of my most treasured pleasure advisors. I've got joining me is Tara Galeano. She is a certified sex therapist. She's worked with women and couples for over 2 decades to get their sexy back. She knows that there is pleasure in the body beyond our wildest dreams, and everyone can access it. So if you're one of those who are thinking, well, I don't got any, she's going to help us out with that. And she has written a book called Rediscovering My Body, and she teaches us how to show up for pleasure. She offers unique couples retreats and ceremonial sensual journeys that open doors to new experiences and communications with oneself and partners. So welcome, Tara Galeano.
Thank you
and then,
so much.
Yay! And then I have another favorite expert here, Dr. Fraya Wolf. She's going to join us in this conversation. She's a certified VITA, sex, love, and relationship coach. She works with midlife and older women and couples to support healthy, happy intimacy in the second half of life. And I have worked with Dr. Fraya Wolf personally. So maybe we can even share a little bit about that. So I want you to know VITA stands for Vital and Integrated Tantric Approach, which combines the ancient with the modern, incorporating Tantra and Taoism with somatic therapy, parts work, and neuroscience. So we got lots to dig into there. Dr. Wolf is a psychotherapist and founder of Dr. Wolf Coaching. Okay, welcome.
Good to be here. So excited to talk to you both today. Thank you.
Hooray. Okay, so, well, first, let's start with, Tara, can we start with you? Tell us where you live, your age, and sort of what brought you to this work?
Sure. So I'm 51. Just owning that. Yes. Yeah, I'm a grandmother. I'm a mother. And as you said, I'm a certified sex therapist. And what brought me to this work really is just responding to my clients. So in human design, I am a generator 3-5, and my desire is to respond. And really, that's what happened. My clients started talking about sex and sexuality and relationships and sexual preferences and identities, and I knew nothing except from my own personal experience because my graduate school didn't even have a class on human sexuality. And so with that paucity of education, I needed to flourish and learn so much more. And then this path just led me meandering along and coming into working with women who had had cancer, women who'd had menopause early because of radiation and chemotherapy. And so I just needed to get up to speed. And now I am in my 50s. And now I really am wanting to have conversations with women around menopause and what is life once we get there, and really giving information to women who are perimenopausal leading up to this, to know the truth of it, to know what exists today. That's kind of where I'm at. And you can see in my background picture all of these vulvas and women. So I'm really been focused and really focused on health and wellness and yonis and vulvas. So yes.
I love that. Okay, Dr. Fraya Wolf, can you give us a little, first of all, tell us where you are in the world, your age, and kind of what was your journey into this work?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the UK and I am 58. So 60 is approaching. Actually, I went through the menopause a long time ago. It seems such a long time ago now. It was an early menopause. Started when I was 40, not as early as some, but it was really as a consequence of a traumatic shock, huge traumatic shock I had in my life at that age. So it's not, menopause doesn't always happen naturally. It can be
Mm.
promoted by such physical traumas or emotional traumas and shocks. It seems like a long time ago to me now, and you know, I didn't have any support at all through the menopause, and actually, the trauma that I was going through was so massive that it didn't really feature on my radar anyway. So it just kind of happened, and wasn't really a big deal at the time. You know, I remember the hot flashes, but it was just the least of my worries at the time. Um, it was only really afterwards that the full weight of it really dawned on me, and I went through a huge grieving process around it, because what happened around that time is what actually led me into doing this work, which is that my husband was my second husband at the time. He left me for a younger woman, which was absolutely devastating. It was another massive shock on top of the trauma I was already experiencing. Um, and I went through this huge grieving process of losing so much, my sexuality, um, and my youthfulness, and then my husband, and the fact that he left me for a younger woman, which is a very common experience, really compounded this loss of what felt like my desirability and my attractiveness, you know, my value. But you know, that experience was the portal to this wonderful second half of my life that I am now experiencing, which is so much better than the first half, and just really lit me up to how amazing sex can be in the second half of your life, how amazing sex post menopause really can be, when actually we grasp this phase of our life as an opportunity for empowerment, for living more fully and powerfully and more authentically than we ever were able to do before this phase of our life. So it just opens so many doors to me. The menopause, that whole experience of loss, you know, breaking everything down right before creating the new. So that's why I do the work that I do. It woke me up. It led to spiritual awakening, sexual awakening, and this whole area of my life, which was so unfulfilling before. And now I just want to let everyone know, every postmenopausal woman know how great their sex life can be, and how great their relationships can be, and how everything can be so different to certainly what I thought it was before that time. I know a lot of other women know and experience from the conditioning that we have throughout first half of our lives.
Well, that's what I want to ask about is, I mean, do you feel like women after 50 are still interested in sex? Or is it just that we're so busy? Because I know in my life, I was like, that's the least of my worries. But
yeah,
it really needs to be kind of on the list. So tell me about that.
Yeah, that's so common. That is, you know, it's so common for women to think, yeah, that's the last thing on my list, over 50, because I think, you know, we are conditioned as women to, well, actually, as a society, to believe that women post-menopause aren't interested in sex, that actually older women aren't sexual women, that you know, sex post menopause isn't really worth it, because you know, we don't have sexual desire, our bodies have changed, we're all dried up, and you know, there's no juicy going on in there, and you know, it's just very painful and unpleasant, and what's the point? So you know, we're sold that story for all of our lives, and the whole pathologizing of the menopause and postmenopause about how we dry up. These words like atrophy, vaginal atrophy. How gross does that sound? It's like that's dying. It's like we got some horrible dead thing down there. It's clearly a medical patriarchal language of that's how women's bodies were seen, are still seen by many. It's just not true. It's just not true. So it's no wonder that women actually, of course, we do experience physical changes to our body. Of course we do. So we're experiencing these changes. We have this narrative, and of course we come up with the conclusion, I don't think I want sex. Actually, I've got a good reason not to have sex anymore. So that is very common.
Yeah, sure. Excuse making. It's a really legit excuse you can throw down when you're kind of tired and you don't want to connect. Tara, talk to me about women over 50, and do you think they're interested in sex and what gets in the way?
I love the way you even framed that. Initially, it was like it's the least of my worries, and I'm like, well, yes. When we frame it like that, it's like one more thing. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Something else to check off our to-do list. It's like, yeah, then what a burden it is. And I don't live that, and I actually didn't say I'm located in California, and I'm not currently menopausal, so I would say probably perimenopausal, but I still have my cycle on a very regular basis. So I feel very blessed in that respect, is that I'm 51 and I'm still having my menses. And I still believe that there is juiciness, and that, yes, we've been sold the story by the patriarchy, hook, line, and sinker, of women's bodies really not being our own bodies, but really being colonized by the patriarchy, and that they're not pleasurable, and if they are, they're only pleasurable in relationship to another, and primarily to a man. And that is so not true, is that we are juicy beings, and we can tap into that life force at any moment and feel the pleasure within ourselves and that juiciness. And I know that to be true, and I see that in the women that I work with.
Nice. Yeah, I think this chore thing is true. Like if I pulled my girlfriend, sex was a chore, or it was a have to, or if it was like, well, you better, so that you're fulfilling your duties. And I know that, like with my work with Fraya, was first of all just redefining what sexual experience was. Like it was the intimacy, it was the communication. Now I have time for intimacy and communication. I just wasn't down for like, okay, throw it down, let's get there. There's so much performance, related to it. And I was like, I don't need to perform anymore. I'm tired of performing. So yeah, maybe Fraya, maybe tell us a little bit about that whole syndrome.
Yeah, sure. Well, what I would say about that is that is one of the great gifts of menopause, is that we don't have to do all the things that we don't want to do anymore. So, okay, we can then say no to sex. We have a legitimate reason, but let's just reframe that, shift that slightly into, we don't have to have the kind of sex we don't want anymore, but we can still be a big yes to the kind of sex that we do want. One of my favorite authors on actually not so much this topic, but I drew very heavily from her teachings around the Margahila, which is this archetype of the postmenopausal woman, the woman in the autumn phase of her life, is that she describes the veil of estrogen drops. So, all our lives before menopause, we're just in service to other people. We're just caring and looking after everybody else, but ourselves, we come last. And then we go through the menopause and the veil of estrogen drops, and we begin to connect with our own wants, our own needs, our own desires. and we're like, what about us? We start getting angry that we're not looking after ourselves. People aren't looking after us. We're looking after everybody else. And then we start making time for ourselves. We start getting connected to what we want, what we need, and what our body wants. And we get connected to our sexual desires and our needs if we allow that process. So sure, there are a lot of women not having sex, but there are also a lot of older women actually having the best sex of their lives. They're having more sex and better sex than they ever had before the menopause, because they're actually getting really switched on to what it is that they really want. And they're not so worried about what people think of them anymore. So they're able to get more assertive, more verbal, more articulate about what is it that I want, and being able to actually being able to ask their partner and say to their partner, I don't like that, I do like this, I want this, how about we do it this way? So that's the empowerment phase of this time in our life. That is, just such a wonderful benefit of being postmenopause.
I like that picture. Tara, I know you teach a lot of kind of techniques and approaches and just ways into the sexual experience. Do you have tips? Because if I were told, I could be more verbal and more articulate about what I wanted, I don't know if I'd know what to say. So I know you have a lot of ideas around that.
I do, yeah. I mean, and I think so much of it is exactly what Fraya was saying, is really dropping this performative paradigm and dropping into ourselves so we can know our own truth, our own desires. And that, I mean, I think it's a fascinating thing that the uterus and the vocal cords actually develop as one organ, and then they separate and extend out. So really speaking your desire has so much to do with the second chakra and that creative force, that sacral force in our body. And when we're able to actually claim what it is that we desire, then we can begin to create it. And speaking it isn't that easy, I'd say, for most women, because there's this, I would say, veil of shyness of, can I really say what I want? And do I even have the words? And so there's so much, I mean, conditioning around the silence of sexuality, even beginning as teenagers. We don't want the parents to hear that we're in ecstasy or that we're experiencing pleasure. So shush, shush, shush. And then when do we actually have the moment to actually vocalize it? Well, maybe when we're married, or maybe when we have kids, but probably not, because then you don't want the kids to hear, you don't want the neighbors to hear, as there's so much shutting us down. And what I really like to help women do is to tap into that ownership of, hell yeah, I have the right to express what it is that I desire, and begin to express that in really simple ways. Maybe it's not in that moment of ecstasy, but it is in the moment of, yeah, I would like another piece of cake. And I'm going to own that because I want it. And really speaking the pleasure in the mundane world, because that is a way of practicing so you can have more pleasure and speak that pleasure in those moments of ecstasy. Because it doesn't happen just because you want it to. It really happens because you begin to practice it.
Oh, wow, that's a beautiful. I love everything about that, including the vocal cord and just that whole connection. I had never really considered that, and yet it feels so true. I know when I was doing this work with my husband, it was funny. It came out of this need of, like, actually around energy in my business. I knew I was holding back because I was shut down in this one area. And, as an entrepreneur, who you are one place is kind of who you are everywhere. So I wanted to investigate what would life be like if I kind of lit up this sexuality and this owning of my own pleasure, rather than all the pleasing and the proving that I'm typically, conditioned to do. And I remember one morning, we had done an exercise, and and I went out that day. I was helping out a friend who was doing an art display up in the city. And I swear to God, I was so magnetic. Now, it wasn't like my best day. I didn't have like the cutest outfit on, or my hair wasn't like all perfect, but I was magnetic. And people came over. I was helping her out in her booth, and she's like, all these people are coming over here because, you know, you're here and you're playing with these scarves. And it was just this notion of, you know, when you light up in this pleasure center, there's just so many things in your world lights up. And I had never seen the correlation before. I just assumed it was like, it's fine, I'll get to it later. But I really saw this huge payoff of just who I was being. I was just so much more expressed.
Yeah.
I love
that
that
story. It's so great, isn't it?
Like someone said, can I take your picture? I'm like, yeah.
Because
They
you're
didn't know I had
shining.
had sex with my husband that morning.
Yeah, you know, pleasure is the medicine. You know, when we can tap into the pleasure, the sexual energy, the life force, that's what lights us up. You know, again, the patriarchy has us believing that we're going to get all this stuff from the outside, from the external. You know, there's this relentless hard sell to menopausal women and older women to be young, stay young, buy this product, you know, buy this thing, and, you know, stop aging. I've seen beauty products that say stop aging in its tracks. Hello, you know, you can't stop aging. You can't. It's part of life. We all get older, and to be able to accept that and understand it and lean into it and get curious about it and learn to love it, that's the answer. To be in pleasure whatever age you are, to know that pleasure comes from within, to know that the lighting up, the glow, the magnetism, all the juicy stuff, the sexiness, the sensuality, you don't buy that in a jar and slap it on. You know, it comes from inner work. It comes from doing the work, doing the practices, getting familiar, getting to know your body, learning to love your body, understand your body, and being able to tap into that pleasure and using pleasure. You know, you can literally, I say literally, with air quotes around it, because, you know, you can actually use pleasure as a medicinal type of blanket. You know, you can tap into that pleasure and feel it. I mean, it is literally in that it's an energy. You're creating the energy of pleasure, and you can actually feel it on your body if you're doing, say, a solo pleasure practice and you're tapping into that pleasure. You can feel it, and you can be stroking your body, soothing your body, enjoying your body with a feeling of pleasure that is literally like a real blanket that you could put around you. So, you know, that's where this success with your sensuality and sexual practices comes from, rather than buying a product. But of course, if people knew this, people wouldn't be able to sell those products.
Indeed. Tara, what are your favorite, for someone who's just kind of waking up to this as like a desire to investigate, where do you guide them first in waking up this sensuality?
I love this, because I'm thinking, oh, products, what products? No more commodification. No. I mean, I'd say the gift of being a wisdom keeper, of being in an aged body, of having the experience of lived a life, is that we have that interior landscape within ourselves that is so rich. And what I know, it is the opportunity to dive into that. And I was just at this retreat, and it was a tantra retreat, and there were so many beautiful people there, but there was one woman in particular. She was like this beautiful little butterfly, and she must have been in her early 30s, and a lot of magnetism and a lot of people drawn to her. And what I found was that there was also this lack of substance. It's like she didn't have the practices, she didn't have the endurance, she didn't have the ability to maintain that magnetism. And so she was constantly in process and wanting to connect with a lot of different people, but me in particular. And I could feel what I was offering was the ground. I was like offering her ground for her magnetism, her butterfly quality, which was very beautiful. And I could see that is the engagement of the youthfulness that we, that flirts with our attention. It's like we want to go after it, we want to engage with it. And it's beautiful. And yeah, and it's so luscious. And then what we offer, I see as older women, aged women, wisdom keepers, is this ground. Is that there we have the opportunity, and have most of us, I would say, that I run with, have dove into that introspection and self-reflection that then allows us to flourish and shine this light within. And I think that's just the difference. So it's just not that one is better than the other, but it's the contrast of where we may have been in our youth and where we are today and what it is that we offer. And so my desire is for women to claim that and surrender to that, to really relax and allow themselves the ability to dive into their own pleasure, because it is within. True thing.
I love that. You mentioned Tantra, and I know, Fraya, you're also, you've been steeped in these ancient philosophies and practices. Why is this kind of important? Do people need to know what Tantra is, or is it just more of it informs your approach?
Well, Tantra has obviously a very long history. It's thousands of years old. And what we're really talking about when we, here in the West, when we're applying Tantra to sex, love, and relationship coaching and practices, is Neo-Tantra. And essentially, I would say that we're talking about mindfulness as it relates to sex. So the Tantra that I've been trained in, it's really has 5 main elements, which is mindfulness and sound and movement and energy work and breath work. So those are the main elements. When you apply those to sex and relationships, I think that actually this is a wonderful approach to sex for menopausal and postmenopausal women, because of the changes in the body. It's really beneficial to slow down, to reacquaint ourselves with ourselves, our body, and our sexuality, but also to take time in pleasure, in whether a woman's on her own or with a partner, to actually learn to be slow about lovemaking, because the old kind of hard and fast sex doesn't work so easily, especially for less lubricated vaginas. It's not like the vagina dries up altogether. That really is a myth. And postmenopausal vaginas can be very much lubricated when they're excited and pleasured, but very often women and couples, they're not used to taking the time to do that. So Tantra really offers a way to get very present and very conscious and very mindful about the whole process of connecting, 2 people connecting, 1 person connecting with their own body, the emotional and the physical side of lovemaking. So it really offers something that is kind of quite different to conventional sex. It's a slowing down, and it's allowing for the movement, for the sound, for the breath, for the energy. It's recognizing there's an energy body as well as a physical body and an emotional body. And it's a very holistic approach, very gentle, very beautiful. I think a lot of people have all these kind of weird and warped visions of what Tantra might be. It's the opposite. It's really soft and gentle and beautiful and slow and sacred. It brings the sacred into sexuality, the spiritual side of sexuality, because The tantrikas of ancient times believed that sex was just one other way to become enlightened. It was as legitimate a path as any other. So it really does offer a lot to older women and couples.
Beautiful. Tara, I wanted to ask a little bit about just, have you seen body shame show up as kind of an inhibitor for sexuality? Because I feel like that's one of the, one of my friends I'm thinking of, she's like sleep, fully clothed, and I don't think she sees herself naked ever. And I think she's just so uncomfortable with just the size of her body and maybe the aging of her body. And I know I had some of that too, to a lesser degree, but it was certainly there. What does our own just perception of ourselves, how does that interfere with our grasping of the pleasure that we're entitled, we deserve?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's just one of the biggest inhibitors that we contend with in this life. I think that when we don't find ourselves to be attractive, then we're not attracting, and we're not attracting the love that we want or the pleasure that we want. And it really, again, it begins from within. And so when we are shaming ourselves because of how we look or how we feel about how we look, then we're not particularly sexy, and we're not experiencing that self-love with ourselves. And so we're not engaged in that self-love with ourselves. And then it's hard to offer or extend that invitation to another. So I think it's a hard place to be, and it's a familiar place. I would say for a lot of us is that, particularly as women, there's so much objectification and so much conditioning and, goodness, social media that impacts our well-being, that there's intrusions upon how we hold ourselves as healthy sexual beings. And so then there's distortions that get, I don't know, infiltrated into our minds, and things like pornography, which are used as education, which are really entertainment, then become ways of thinking about not only sexual acts, but about ourselves. And so then comparison begins, or judgments, and it's really uncomfortable, and it's a very painful place to be. And what I know really needs to happen are conversations like this, where we are real women living in real bodies, and we're talking about sex and sexuality. And this is probably one of the most profoundly healthy thing that women can engage in, is conversation with other women about their experiences, because it is so normalizing, it is so loving, and it is such a powerful antidote to what we experience in society pervasively.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And where can people go to have those conversations? Sometimes your girlfriends are as in the dark as you are.
Yeah. I host those conversations.
Yeah, tell me about that. Yeah. Where do you host those conversations? I've been tuning into some of your lives. They've been so interesting. Yeah, seek out Tara for some just a good grounding in what's possible and what does it feel like and look like when you don't have those kind of all those judgments on you. She's a beautiful, Tara, you're a beautiful light in that way, that you just melt away all those imperfections, and you're just like so honest and authentic, and like, here's where it's at, and this is what you can do. And so yeah, I love that you have those conversations. Fraya, what do you think, like just getting really tactical, if someone's kind of leaning in and maybe they're not ready to hire a coach yet or join a program, but how do they just start to wake themselves up in this area, or even know if it's important?
I love that question, because it makes me think of one of my favorite practices, which is talking to Yoni. And so yoni is the Sanskrit word for all of the female sexual genitals, inside and out. And I love to encourage women to just place a cupped hand over yoni. You may have done this in one of my Love Sexy self-care
And so,
retreats
yeah.
before the days of COVID. So just cupping a hand over yoni and just settling in to meditate. That means just spending some time in silence and asking yoni a question. What do you need right now? What would you like to say to me? And just sitting there and listening, and she will speak to you. And she is the keeper of so much wisdom. And if you connect with Yoni, she will speak to you. And I think, that's the start of an important connection and conversation with your own body that anyone can have. And we need to listen to the voice within, that inner voice. We're surrounded all the time by all this noise, everybody else's voices, people and society and media, and all the internalized voices of our families and friends, and again, society. And it does take some practice actually to just quieten all that noise down and listen to the voice within, and especially the voice of Yoni. Yeah.
I love
Put your
that.
trust in her.
Trust in Yoni.
Yes.
Great. So we're needing to wrap up, but I wanted to make sure people knew about the wonderful resources that you provided in the portal. And so, Tara, can you tell us a little bit about the Body Wisdom Journal and the bonuses you have for people?
Yes. So the Body Wisdom Journal is really just a small example of the work that I like to do, because I like women to get in touch with themselves and really own their expertise on who they are. And so the journal is some prompts to help women begin to write and make that connection for themselves, and to try some different things on. So I offer that to you. And I also offer a discount on my coaching packages, which I'm really excited about, because I do want to work with women who are wanting to lean into full life after 50, because juicy stuff there.
Oh yeah, very. Thank you. And Fraya, tell us a little bit about the Goddess Guide and this ritual that you are preparing for us.
So the Goddess Guide, I referenced it earlier. It's about the Maga Healer. It's about the autumn of your life, or you call it the fall over in the US. And it's really about the wisdom and power in that phase of your life once you decide to step into what the menopause can offer you. And so that's a guide that's available as a download from my website. And I'm also offering a breathwork ritual for menopause through my Ageless Goddess Facebook group, which is a really beautiful opportunity to acknowledge and honor this really major life transition. There are so many cultures around the world that actually take the time to honor the major life transitions, especially for women. We go through so many different stages that produce major changes in our body. And the menopause is a really important one. So we can just skip by and complain a lot about it, but we can also lean into it and learn from it. And just taking the time to acknowledge and honor that process can bring real benefit. So I would love to offer the special breathwork ritual to your readers.
I am so excited for that. And since I have you, tell me what full living after 50 means to you.
Well, for me, it's definitely reconnecting to my sexuality and my sensuality in ways that I never knew were possible. And I want every woman after 50 to know that that is possible. To me, that is full living, because it's the most beautiful thing, most beautiful gift that I could have ever hoped to receive after 50.
Yay! And Tara, what's your take on full living after 50?
I love that. I love your answer, Freya, and I just want to say ditto.
Woo!
Yeah, that we're
Double
more
down.
juicy, we're more juicy, we're more confident, we're just way more ourselves.
Yes, yes, we are.
Yeah. And that is the gift of full living after 50, I think, is we get to be wholly and fully ourselves and express that in the world. Yes, indeed, ladies. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think there's a lot of waking up happening as people are listening to just your journeys and the approaches you use with your own clients, and just this conversation about getting to own yourself again and really getting to know yourself and letting your yoni be your guide. I'm feeling a bumper sticker. All right, thank you, Tara and Freya. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So
thank you.
And I invite all of you to watch the other Full Living After 50 expert conversations, where we cover all the topics that really matter to us right now in this stage of life. We've covered hormones, adrenals and stress, nervous system and joyful movement, inflammation, and then trusting your own inner authority, which is really intuitive guidance. And of course, today's conversation are all around pleasure and as medicine. So that was perfect. So thank you. Please share this with your 50-ish friends, whether they're approaching menopause or in menopause or well beyond. There's absolutely so much goodness in these conversations to share. So I will see you over on the Facebook community for deeper conversations. Thank you.